All right, good morning. Welcome to today's webinar. It is currently November 30th, 2021 at 11 a.m. My name is Danielle Baird and I'm the Michigan Green Communities Program Coordinator. We will give people just a minute to sign on to the webinar because it's 11 o'clock on the dot right now, and we'll give people just a minute to gather. Okay. Good morning again. If you're just joining us, the webinar is about to get started here. And just so you know too, this webinar will be recorded for future watching as well. So for anybody who's not able to stay the whole time or registered and isn't able to join us, you'll still have access to this webinar later, and it will be posted on the Michigan Green Communities website as well. So we can go ahead and get started. Our webinar today is the new and refreshed Michigan Green Communities Challenge and Network. Today we'll hear from Dave Norwood, who serves on the Michigan Green Communities Steering Committee and has been a participant in the Michigan Green Communities Challenge and Network with the City of Dearborn. Shanna Draheim is the director of the Policy Research Labs team at the Michigan Municipal League and also serves on the Michigan Green Communities Steering Committee. She and I will be moderating and answering some questions today along with Dave. And as I said before, my name is Danielle Baird and I am the Michigan Green Communities Coordinator. I'll give a quick overview of the program's goals and the partners that make it possible. Then we'll turn it over to Dave to talk about his experience as a Green Communities Steering Committee member and as a participant in the Challenge and Network. We'll plan to spend about 30 to 40 minutes on this presentation and then have the last 20 to 30 minutes for questions and answers. So the Michigan Green Communities program began in 2009, and the program is designed to accelerate environmentally sustainable actions by communities to enhance Michigan's livability and economic competitiveness in the 21st century global green economy. Particularly in the past year, nearly every community in Michigan has experienced challenges related to severe weather events, including drought in our agricultural lands, flooding basements in our more urbanized areas, massive mosquito populations, heat waves, and more. We're also seeing massive shifts in the way that we produce energy and commute around the state. But there are very tangible actions that communities can take to ensure that Michigan remains a place that is livable and economically vibrant, despite the many changes that we're seeing. So that's where the Michigan Green Communities program aims to help. And as part of this program, it's actually a collaborative effort among the following agencies and organizations. So the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, the Michigan Association of Counties, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, the Michigan Municipal League, the Michigan Townships Association, as well as the Michigan Municipal League Foundation. So these entities all have a spot on the steering committee along with up to 8 representatives from counties, villages, cities, and townships. So with that, I will hand it over to Dave to spend a few minutes talking about his experience with the City of Dearborn being a participant and a steering committee member for the Michigan Green Communities program.
Right. Thank you, Danielle, and welcome everybody to the webinar. A couple of things that I do want to talk about and mention about the challenge and about the network is looking back at when we first started it. The idea was to have, how can communities get together and talk about their sustainability journey and what they're doing and how we could share and have peer learning. And at that same time, unbeknownst to some of those communities, the Michigan Municipal League was working on something very similar. So it was almost diabolical how that all worked out with the challenge, with the leadership that was going on at the league, with the monies that was coming out through ARA, with the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant dollars. So the idea was how can communities embrace sustainability and move forward with projects, programs, or policies And so the network formed, and we partnered with MML and moved forward with the challenge. And it has gone through several different iterations over the years to reflect whatever the priorities of the communities. And that's one of the beauties of this organization and this network, is it really is driven by local government. And what makes us different than other networks that are around the country that practice sustainability is our partnerships that we have. And that leads me to the discussion about in the steering committee. It's not just cities or local governments or townships or counties. It includes state agencies who also have interest in bringing programming and policies and projects to local governments. So I do want to mention kind of a third partner, and I'm not sure he's on the call now, but I'd like to call him our godfather. That is Jeff Spencer with DEQ, who was very helpful in helping us understand the priorities at the state level and how we can collaborate with local governments and the state agencies to have success. So for us in Dearborn, the challenge has been a great tool that I use to guide our different departments and the projects they're doing, whether it's the fleet or whether it's water or whether it's with energy, because all the years we've had these different focuses as we move forward. So I'm very excited about Danielle's work in refreshing the challenge, her embracing of the communities to bring this forward. So I look forward to our next iteration of the challenge and keep moving ahead on sustainability. Thank you, Danielle.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to go back to the presentation now. And also it was noted too, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat. We will answer them towards the end. But if you have a thought, put it in the chat now and we will get to it at the end of the presentation. So some of you might already be familiar with the Michigan Green Communities Challenge. It's the annual sustainability benchmarking program that's part of the Michigan Green Communities program. And I'll spend the majority of the time talking about that next. But in addition to the challenge, we have a number of other benefits that come along with being part of the Michigan Green Communities program. Before I dive into those, I do want to reiterate that the Michigan Green Communities program is free to participate, and it is open to all cities, villages, townships, and counties in Michigan, even if your community is not a member of the Michigan Association of Counties, the Michigan Municipal League, or Michigan Townships Association. So this is really open to all communities in Michigan, free of charge. And even if you want to be part of the Michigan Green Communities Network, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take part in the challenge. There are still lots of benefits that come along with being in the program. Some of those include a peer learning network, which we'll talk some more about as well, connections to technical assistance and resources, as well as a wealth of guides and examples from the Catalyst Communities program from Eagle. And I'll talk about all of those coming up here. So the benchmarking challenge, like I said, has been a key component of the Green Communities program since the beginning. The action items on the list have changed over the years to reflect the continued understanding of our environment, best practices, and policies. Like Dave was saying, it's taken different iterations over the years to make sure that we're meeting communities where they're at and meeting their needs. So this year, a team of subject matter experts and local governments recalibrated and expanded the list of action items. You'll notice the following themes as you review and digest that list of action items, which can also be found on the website at mygreencommunities.com/challenge. And so a few of the themes here that you see listed. So we are focusing heavily on protecting people, our infrastructure and built environment, as well as natural features as well. They ask communities to ensure that they are being inclusive in their planning and engagement processes. There's also a sense of urgency in the action items. As I mentioned earlier, we're seeing many drastic changes in our weather patterns, and they're having a significant impact. And we also know that these probably are not likely just a fluke, that our weather patterns are changing. So the action items on the list are things that will have measurable impact for communities, both in dollars and cents, as well as quality of life for residents and for the success of our agricultural sector and businesses. So we'll admit that the list grew to be a little bit long, but we don't want anyone to be alarmed by the number of action items, or if you've participated in the program in the past, and maybe received a silver level certification. If you get bumped down to bronze or something, we don't want you to be too concerned about that. The action items are really meant to be aspirational. There are a handful of things on this list that probably haven't been achieved by any community, but they're things that we're hoping communities will work towards. And lastly, we know that climate change can often be a pretty dismal subject. But we believe that hope is not an attitude, it is an action. So as a highly adaptive and resilient species, we need to be taking actions to make sure that we have livable communities now and in the future. So all of the categories, all of the action items fall under these 9 main categories, which you can see on your screen. If you're joining us by phone, those action item categories include planning for inclusive and lasting impacts. So that's things around community planning and zoning, your capital improvements plans, things like that. Climate resilience and adaptation. So that's assessing how climate change is going to be impacting our communities and how we can make sure that we're adapting to those changes appropriately. The third category is energy efficiency and renewable energy. The fourth category is responsibly managing materials. So that's things around solid waste, compost, recycling, things of that nature. The fifth category is sustainable land use and economic development. The sixth category is improving health outcomes. So these are things, especially too, in the past almost 2 years now, public health has been a very big focus, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of our changing climate. The seventh category is protecting and conserving water resources. The eighth category is supporting clean and inclusive mobility. And then lastly, inspire and mobilize residents. So those are the practices that communities are engaging in to make sure that they are including residents in their planning processes, as well as enabling residents to take action themselves when it comes to climate resilience and adaptation. So on this list of action items, I'll have a couple examples for you in just a moment, but and like I said too, you can download the entire list of action items on the website before the challenge actually opens up in January. So we looked at all of these action items, and when working with our partners at the local government level, we wanted to make sure that we were recognizing where communities are at in their sustainability journey. So within each of these categories of action items, you'll see items where communities can lead by example, where we're really talking about how a community can adapt its own, a municipality can adapt its own internal processes to make sure that they are doing the things that they should be doing, to also encourage others to also take sustainable action, and making sure that they are taking the first step though, and leading by example. Enabling change, those are things where we're changing, community ordinances or policies that, or implementing programs that help to foster forward momentum within a community and enable the change, enable actions that will create a more sustainable community. And then on the further end of that spectrum of sustainability actions is accelerating impacts. And what that really means is we are making measurable progress. So a municipality is making measurable progress when it comes to, protecting and conserving water and energy, stormwater mitigation, things like that, where we're actually going to see some really tangible impacts based on the actions taken by a community. So I'll give you a few examples here of some things that are on the Green Communities Challenge this year. So under the climate resilience and adaptation category, we have a group of action items labeled under hazard mitigation. And so hazard mitigation would be things like ensuring that your community is, prepared for disastrous events, whether that's wildfires or floods, and we're prepared to, we're taking steps that will help to mitigate the effects of those so that we have less loss of life, as well as less loss of property, which ultimately lowers the cost of dealing with any potential hazards in the future. So if you can take a look at the on the action items on the screen there, These are things where you're really embedding hazard mitigation considerations into your community infrastructure plans, where you have a plan to actually deal with hazards as they arise. And then also you're implementing hazard mitigation projects to address the risks that you identified in your hazard mitigation plan. So that's the area where we see things that would accelerate, accelerating the impact that we're having on our environment. And so one of the things too that I'll note as you do this, you'll be filling out this challenge based on the actions taken by your municipality in the 2021 calendar year. So there will be different options for this, for each of these action items. You'll have the option to select not started, in progress, or completed. And so, let's say you have a hazard mitigation plan that is still current, but you didn't do it in 2021, you did it in 2019, but it's still current. Mark that as completed, right? That's something that you've already done. But you'll notice that there are some things that you'll see on the next slide where you'll want to make sure that you're doing those year after year. So if you didn't do it in 2021, you would mark it as not started. But there are many things that are long-standing plans that can be counted towards your certification. And because the measuring stick for all communities is not the same, we're also offering an option for many of these action items to actually select not applicable. So in some of the examples that you see here under protecting and conserving water resources under municipal water conservation, the first three items are things that pretty much every community can do. So tracking local water use for all of your municipal buildings using Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So that's kind of your, leading by example action item. Developing a plan to upgrade and retrofit your buildings to conserve water, and then actually upgrading and retrofitting at least one municipal building to reduce water use. So the last two, though, in that category, adopting an asset management plan for your municipal water systems or improving the efficiency of your water and wastewater treatment plants. Not every municipality in Michigan actually has a municipal water system. So obviously we're not going to be scoring you on things that your community is not actually able to do. And so as we go through this process, this is an iterative program. Like Dave said, we're going to make some tweaks and tune-ups to this over time. And so if you feel that there are action items when you're going through this challenge that are unclear, or there are more that need to be, that need that not applicable option, things like that, please tell us. That is exactly the kind of feedback we're looking for. And so we want to make sure that that this program is really meeting the needs of all communities. And one thing too, if you have been a part of this program in the past and have participated in the challenge, in the past, there was a metric section. So for things measuring like water use, GHG emissions, and energy use, we are actually going to press pause on that piece of the challenge this year. And the reason for that is that we anticipate that the state's Council on Climate Solutions will be releasing a set of metrics for communities to track. So we want to align those metrics with the state's metrics so that when participating in this program, you're not duplicating efforts, right? So if you're tracking it for the state reporting, or if you're tracking it for green communities, you have all of the same information for both. So we're going to press pause on that for this year. And rather than asking you to complete a set of metrics this year and potentially a different set next year, we are just going to wait on that till the next year of this program. Okay, so that is the overview of the challenge. Actually, I'll go back really quickly. There are 3 levels of certification for the challenge: bronze, silver, and gold at this point. And you get points if you're in progress as well as completing your action items. So we want to recognize where all communities are at. And this year, the bronze level certification will be scoring 20 points. Silver level certification will be scoring 60 points. And then gold level certification will be 100 points. And we can talk a little bit more about that during the Q&A as well. So after the challenge launches in January of 2022, we're also going to be launching a peer-to-peer online forum for elected and appointed local government officials and local government staff. So this will likely happen around February. Vendors will not be allowed to join this online forum. It's going to be a space for you to ask questions, find peers who have completed things that you're looking at doing yourself, or finding others who are just getting started in certain projects. And you'll have the opportunity to follow relevant topics and engage with your peers on those. So additionally, part of my role is to connect communities with resources to help them in their sustainability journeys. The forum is going to be a really good place to start when looking for, examples or support from other communities that have done similar things. But one-on-one assistance is also going to be available by emailing info@mygreencommunities.com. And then let's see, one of the last pieces of the program here that we'll talk about is the Eagle Catalyst Communities Program. The Eagle Catalyst Communities Program is a comprehensive initiative to provide education, training, planning, and technical resources to local public officials as they prepare for climate impacts on emergency response and public health. So I'll actually pop over to the Catalyst Communities page here because this is a wealth of resources that will actually help you in completing the challenge. It's in the process of being updated, but I can at least show you really quick here. Okay. There we go. Okay, so if you go to the Office of Climate and Energy page on michigan.gov, which is just michigan.gov/climate and energy. Again, we'll post all of these links in the chat too at the end of this. This is a really great page with quite a few resources on it. So if we go to climate, over to Catalyst Communities, we have some fabulous partners at Eagle that are working to align the Catalyst Community Initiative with the Michigan Green Communities Program. So when you're in your renewable energy and energy efficiency category and you pop over to Catalyst Communities, which everything will be linked back and forth between the Michigan Green Communities page and this page. And you go down here, and these are the action items that correspond with the Michigan Green Communities Challenge. And then you have a wealth of resources here. So webinars on how to do energy benchmarking, for example, how to use the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, as well as community examples. That's the thing that Eagle has been working really hard to do, is make sure that we have plenty of examples for you to model your community's work off of as well. And so that is the Catalyst Communities Program page, and they're still fleshing this out, so there's going to be more to come. By the time the challenge launches, this will all be up to date as well, but everything will tick and tie really nicely, so you're not looking at some at trying to figure out which things align with what. It'll be very clear where everything aligns with one another between the challenge and the Catalyst Communities Program. Okay. And at this point, that is about the end of the content that we have for now. I'm sure there's plenty of questions, and we will open up the floor for Q&A.
Danielle, this is Shanna. I think as we're sort of waiting for folks to put some questions in, I just want to take a second and say thank you. It was great overview. I also want to give a shout out to the rest of our steering committee who helped shape these, as well as we had a group of volunteer technical committee members that we tapped from various environmental and health related organizations and community organizations who generously donated their time to help us look through these and think about and update. And the final thing I just wanted to give a shout out for and say thank you to is to Julie Staveland and Jeff and others at Eagle I can't emphasize enough this connection with Catalyst communities. One of the things our steering committee was wrestling with, and that we heard from others, was really wanting to make sure we're not having multiple things out there that people are kind of trying to figure out communities. We know that capacity is always an issue in communities, and whether that's township, city, village, or county, or an educational institution. And so just really making sure that we are connecting and integrating those two efforts. And it's been just a great opportunity to do that, and really great working with the Eagle team on trying to make sure we're getting that alignment between these programs. So yeah, so I just want to give that thank you. Okay, and so there's been a couple questions that came in that I was kind of answering some live. We did have some questions. Dave mentioned at the beginning the EECBG, which was the energy efficiency block grants that were available back in the, I don't know, it was like 2012-ish timeline. Those are no longer available. There are other grants that occasionally come out there, and I'll let some of the Eagle folks chime in here, but there are certainly grants out there that help communities across a wide array of some of these sustainability things. There are things in the waste management field. There are, occasionally water and water resources ones. One of the things we have talked about, and I know Eagle has some of this, so if Julie or somebody wants to put something in the chat, we can do that, but that trying to make sure we're pointing you all as communities to those resources as they come online, like as we hear about grants, making sure we're sharing that information. All right, let's see. A couple other questions here. One of the questions was, do we have to use Energy Star portfolio to track local water use, or can we use a different system used by the city? And Dave or Danielle, feel free to chime in here. The criteria or the action items do right now include Energy Star portfolio manager as the tracker for that. And there was a lot of conversation about that with the technical committee and the steering committee, that trying to get some consistency in what that tracking system is, again, so that we can help, roll up information as we do start to track metrics down the road, but also so that there's some, consistency in terms of, how different communities are reporting and tracking that data. If that becomes an issue and that's a point of feedback you'd like to share with us, after this year's challenge, and we're kind of relooking at that, I think we'd certainly be open to that. But that was the decision at this point.
Mm-hmm. Again, yeah, we want to hear your suggestions for the challenge as we go. So through this first year, the challenge has existed in the past. It took a little bit of a hiatus in 2020 due to the pandemic, funding issues, things like that. And I think everybody here was probably dealing with COVID at that point. So, kind of consider this a year to sort of refresh the challenge, and we can make some tweaks and tune-ups from here and there. So
Danielle, we have a question there about the rating system. Again, pardon me if you answered this, but how does the rating point system work?
Yes,
hit that again?
I am happy to answer that. So, like I said, the list of action items has expanded quite a bit. What we kind of did was, in the past, there were about 36 action items. A lot of those action items, though, had multiple steps to them and were kind of condensed down. What we did was expand those out and try to make sure that we are recognizing communities for their efforts where they're at, even if they haven't, gotten to the end stage of a particular project. If they're in progress on it, we want to make sure that we're allocating points for that as well. That also helps us to identify sticking points for communities, and maybe jump in and ask some questions about how the Green Communities program can provide more resources on that and things like that. But yeah, I'll explain the rating and point system a little bit more. We have 127 action items this year. 25 of those have that option to select not applicable. So for example, if your community doesn't have sewer systems, you're not going to be answering questions on sewer systems, and vice versa. If your community does not have septic systems, you're not going to be answering questions on septic systems. But so the point system works where you can either select not started, you can select in progress, and in progress is worth 1 point. Completed is worth 2 points. So for the bronze level certification at 20 points, that means you've completed 10 items on the list, or you have some combination of completed or in progress. So, and then the next level is the silver level certification, and that will be 60 points. So that means you've either completed 30 action items on the list, or you have some combination of completed and in progress. And then 100 points for gold, which when we were kind of beta testing this with some of our past Green Communities Challenge participants, and that were gold level in the past, they quite easily scored around 100 points. And so that would be, again, you've either completed 50 action items or you have some combination of completed or in progress. And many of these things are, many of the action items on the list that you'll see are really just embedding sustainability into the things that you're already doing as a community. So while many of the things do require some staff time, many of them are actually relatively low monetary investment. So we think it's attainable, but again, let us know if you think differently as you go through this challenge. Does that answer your question on the rating and point system?
Hopefully. There's a sort of a related question here, Danielle, and I'm happy to take it if you want, but somebody had asked, you know, they had earned the bronze award. Are we starting over again in this new program? So for those of you who have participated in the Green Communities Challenge program, no, you are not starting over, even though these are new. So the answers will be different and the interface of the database will be different. If you have actions that you have taken that you have reported in the past, you'll still be reporting on those actions in this system. So I think Danielle mentioned there are a few things that are very specific to like a calendar year 2021, right? Did you do an energy efficiency project in your building last year? But most of these things that are sort of standing actions that your community has taken, plans, policies, ordinance changes, other types of things that are existing, you would still mark those as either, you know, completed or in progress. So you won't be starting over, and you'll see a lot of familiar action items in here. We didn't completely revamp the whole thing. There's lots of this built on what was already in the program. So my guess is an answer to that is you'll actually have probably some additional things that you'll be answering and doing. And the other thing I will add to that is we did download everybody's responses from previous years. So I do have that. We do have that on the back end if needed, and you need help accessing something you submitted before. I'm pretty sure, I want to verify that with our tech person, but I'm pretty sure we can access that again. So if you wanted to like see a printout of that or something like that.
Yeah. Then there's another question in here too that's kind of tangential. There's a few others. We'll make sure we get to all of these before the end here. But it says, could you share an outcome you expect from doing the challenge? I'm an elected official and want to encourage and sell the program to a very busy staff, which is very true. So I think Dave would be a really good person to answer that question, likely, being one of those busy staff members himself. What I'll say briefly is that the outcomes from the challenge is really, it's meant to support communities in their sustainability efforts. So this acts as sort of that guidebook for, you know, if the question is, what is it that we are even supposed to be doing? Where should we get started? This is a good place to get started. And then also receiving the, you know, resources along the way. But Dave, do you think you could share your perspective as one of those very busy staff members who has whose community has worked on this challenge in the past?
So one of the things that when I got involved with the challenge was there was certainly the peer-to-peer pressure among communities to participate. But also, it also got our public works department looking at on particular energy use and lighting. And this was early on. I mean, LED lighting has come a long way, but early on, I had a hard time convincing staff to embrace, especially our facility staff, to embrace LED lighting because they didn't understand the technology. So, as you take on different parts of the challenge, you look for opportunities to bring a project, and that actually saved us quite a bit of money when we did LED lighting throughout our facilities. That was just one example.
Yeah, I would say cost savings are definitely show up in this challenge when it comes to things like Dave said, like energy use, water use. The other piece of it is improving quality of life for residents. So many communities this year did experience significant flooding in residential properties as well as businesses. And if you're able to help mitigate that for your residents, you are, I mean, it's just the burden on the community to assist those residents and kind of help to remediate the effects of that, not only on private infrastructure, but public infrastructure as well. It leads to significant cost savings for communities.
We should also note that when the certifications are made, we do an event, we do an awards event. In years past, that's been a standalone event. And then in recent years, that's been in conjunction with Eagle's sustainability conference. So your community will be recognized at that event. And we do provide kind of a packet of information, like a packet for you to help promote it in your local media, like a press release you can use. We will promote communities and social media. So you do also get some good, you can get some good local coverage and community kind of kudos from that too, Jen. So there's been a couple questions here related to federal recovery bills and stimulus bills. And I'll happily take that one on. So, this is a huge opportunity. There's a huge opportunity in front of all of your communities right now. And I know, from the state agencies who are part of the Green Communities organizations, as well as MML, Michigan Association of Counties, Michigan Association of Townships, we all are really encouraging our communities to think about these opportunities, whether that's, ARPA recovery funding, whether that's the new infrastructure bill, if, Build Back Better and some of these other things come down the pike as well. Really thinking about, we have been really trying to say to our members, think about how to use some of those dollars to make investments that are sustainable, not just environmentally sustainable, but fiscally sustainable. How could you be potentially investing in things now that will improve the resilience of your community, that might ultimately save your community costs? So if using some of those federal dollars, for example, to do, significant energy efficiency improvements in your municipal facilities, for example, not only is that a great, potential use to deal with, what was maybe revenue losses in your community, but if that also is helping to save costs and ultimately, buffer against, future budget constraints, those are great ways to think about some of those opportunities for using infrastructure funding and others. So I think those are really great opportunities. I know our organization, the League, MTA, we've partnered with them and MAC as well. We will be doing continuing to do, and we have already been doing a host of webinars and things around those federal programs and what those opportunities are and how communities can access those. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, but it is a great opportunity.
Let's see here, just taking a look at the questions. There's also, Shanna, did you answer this one about some of the grant resources that are available? Specifically, I think looking at solar panels as well.
I answered sort of generally. I don't know off the top of my head,
Yeah.
and I think some of our Eagle team probably are better able to answer that. I think that they could type an answer there. If not, it's something that we could follow up with you. I answered generally in that, as grant opportunities come up, we will be sharing those through the Green Communities Network. So it's another reason to sign up. Danielle put the link in there, mygreencommunities.com/join, because we will post things to the website, but we will also push out grant opportunities as they come up.
Let's see. A couple other questions in here. This was a really good question here about exploring the possibility of creating a non-technical committee to help inform the steering committee on everyday residents' concerns regarding sustainability and climate adaptation, particularly fears around implementing these actions and the impacts on property values, taxes, etc. It would be great to have a mechanism to include community members who are not experts in these areas but want to learn more. I think that's a great idea. One of the things with the steering committee is, we have the steering committee itself is made up of all of the signatories to the MOU that we mentioned earlier. So, Eagle, MDHHS, the respective municipal associations. But there are also spots for up to 8 communities to join onto that steering committee as well. And we can always be creating subcommittees that help the steering committee make more informed decisions. So absolutely, we would be interested in exploring something like that. Additionally, in the challenge, we encourage communities to actually be creating both an internal sustainability team and either combining that with residents from the community, or creating their own external sustainability team as well to help guide the municipality's actions. Those would be some really good places to recruit from to get community members voicing their opinions here too, and making sure that we do that ground truthing. So I really appreciate that question, and we are going to add that to the list.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in real quick, Dan. I think that's a great idea, because from an equity standpoint and how there's a lot of work in the sustainability world around equity, and sometimes we get lost at our desks and in the local government where we're not actually reaching out through whatever kind of engaged we are on, or what we are doing. Is it the right things that what our communities want to see us be doing? So I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, engaging residents and businesses, as well as those that you don't normally hear from, the people who are hiding in plain sight. We always appreciate the people who are regular participants at our, township board meetings, our city council meetings, things like that. But we also need to make sure that we're hearing from the people who aren't showing up to all of those all the time, because they also do have really good insight. Let's see here. Then there's also a question, we've had a few questions about this even prior to this webinar today, about the possibility of doing a regional approach. So at this point, it's really been for individual communities, whether that's a county, city, village, or township. But there is that possibility of, taking on a regional approach. And so this question actually comes from the city of Saugatuck. And so some of your neighbors to the north, I believe, are looking at doing a regional approach as well. So what we're saying at this point is, if you want to collaborate with other communities in your area, so let's say you do a regional climate adaptation plan, we'll still ask you to fill out the survey for your individual community. But that regional adaptation plan, or whatever regional efforts you work on, those would all count towards your own certification.
You would basically you'd basically each still check those things. So if you're doing regional plans, if you're undertaking a project at the regional level, you could each sort of check credit for that, if you will, on the challenge, but you would apply and be part of the challenge as your individual community.
Yeah, at this point, we just haven't developed a, like a regional track for the challenge, if you will. But we think it's a great idea, and we would love to see regional collaborations. The challenge action items themselves do encourage regional collaboration as well. So please do. In the meantime, fill it out individually for your community, but know that those regional initiatives that you work on can certainly apply to your own individual community.
And I'll just use this as a moment to plug the idea of joining the network and being part of that peer-to-peer, that platform, that networking platform that's going to be available. We really see this as a great opportunity to share lessons learned. Everybody, who's been around this program or been around me and a lot of the other things knows that I'm a huge fan of beg, borrow, and steal. Like, there are people doing great work. And so if you guys are doing things at a regional level, join that and share that and help some of your other communities understand how that can happen. Because again, capacity is always an issue. We know you guys are busy, and in your daily life, like the steps to go and like collaborate at a regional level, it can be hard. It can be challenging when time is tight. And so if there are great ways to do that or examples of success stories there, please share them with your peers. It's a great opportunity.
There can also be significant cost savings when doing things at a regional level. If you wanted to do something like a watershed management plan at the regional level, it makes most sense to do that because watersheds don't really follow our political boundaries. So yeah, those are some areas where there can be significant cost savings as well. Any other questions, comments at this point? We'll give another minute to type some questions into the chat if you have them. Do have a couple other quick things too after the Q&A is over, but want to make sure that we give some time for more questions.
I'll just note that as we fully recognize that as you all get into this process, once the challenge launches in January and you're actually going in and starting to fill these out, we know questions will come up there. Danielle, I think, or someone could put in the chat the email address. It's also on the website, but as you're getting into this, this is very much a technical assistance program as well. So we're available to help you if you're, struggling with a particular question or how to answer something. We're happy to help you as you make your way through this challenge.
Okay, since we're not seeing any other questions in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Just talk about a couple other quick updates. So something that you all might be interested in is the Council on Climate Solutions has their recommendations for the My Healthy Climate Plan, and there are 2 public listening sessions coming up tomorrow and Thursday. I'm going to go ahead and drop in the chat the link that has more information on that. If you are able to attend, they're both, I believe, 2 hours long. So one during work hours tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning, and then December 2nd at 6 o'clock. So if you go to the link that I just dropped in the chat, you will see all of that information at the top of the page. Okay, and lastly, again, if you have any additional comments or questions at any point, please feel free to email us at info@mygreencommunities.com. That's migreencommunities.com. You can also find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. That's a place where if there are more short-term things that we would like to push out to everybody, announcements about grant funding, things like that as they come up, or any other resources and programming. We're on Twitter and LinkedIn. We'll post things there. If you go to mygreencommunities.com/join, you can join our mailing list. We promise not to send you too many things. We do a quarterly newsletter and then an occasional e-blast as important information comes up about the program. Okay, and if there are no other questions at this point, we are going to go ahead and wrap up. And we thank you all for joining us.